en casa. We are going to learn to describe houses, and different rooms in the house, and we're going to work with colors and different vocabulary to describe houses and different buildings. Okay, so let's go to página 97, and here, well, I'll let you take a closer look at the content, but on your own. But this is what we're going to be doing. We're going to go over the vocabulary for the house. In pronunciation, we're going to work with the letters H, G, and J, H, J, y G. We're going to start with irregular verbs, and also work with vocabulary to describe furniture and other household objects, household chores, and we're going to be using some of these verbs that we learned here to talk about household chores. Colors and different expressions with tener. We learned the verb tener in the chapter when I have a brother, or she has two grandmothers, and different things like that. We use the verb tener, and like I keep telling you all the time, things come back. Okay, because in a language everything is related. Okay, so don't forget what you learned before, because it will come back, especially verbs that are so common, like the verb tener and the verb ser and the verb estar that you just finished in this last chapter. Okay, numbers, we're gonna keep going up, and then we're also going to work a little bit with the expression I. When you describe a house, you want to describe what there is or there are in different rooms, so we're going to work with that expression. Okay, so the first thing we do in each chapter is go over some vocabulary that we will need to form different sentences, and put together the vocabulary with the verbs and adjectives and different things like that. So this vocabulary for la casa. Okay, so we're going to start here in the bottom, describing different parts of the house, like el jardín, the front yard, el jardín. And remember, in your ebook you can click here and you can hear the pronunciation. Okay, so take advantage of that. La sala, the living room, la sala, el balcón, the balcony, la oficina, the office, la escalera, the stairs, la escalera, el garaje, la cocina, the kitchen, el comedor, the dining room. And if you notice, comedor comes from the word comer, the place where you eat. El comedor. El dormitorio, the bedroom. El baño, the bathroom. El techo, the roof. And el altillo, the attic. Okay, so practice those words. And here you have a few more useful words. El cuarto means a room. Any room is el cuarto. Okay, el piso is the floor. It can mean the floor, as in where you stand, or it can also mean the story. Like when you have a 2-3 story high building, we call the different floors los pisos. La planta baja is the ground floor. Okay, in English you call this the first floor. In Spanish we call it the ground floor. And the second floor, what would be the second floor in English, in Spanish is the first floor. Okay, because you have the ground floor first and then the first floor. Okay, so la planta baja, the ground floor, la planta baja, and then el primer piso, which is this one. Primer means first, but in English it would be the second. And el segundo piso is the second floor, which would be the attic in Spanish. This would be the second floor. Okay, planta baja, primer piso, segundo piso, el altillo. Okay, el sótano, the basement, el sótano, el suelo, the floor, and el tercer piso would be the third floor, which in English would be the fourth floor. Okay, muy bien. Piso or suelo are used for floor, all right, as in where you stand, what you stand on, okay, is the floor. But piso can also be used for story, the first story, second story, third story. Okay, muy bien. Vamos a la página 99, and you're going to be doing some activities with the vocabulary, okay? And you have an explanation in my Spanish lab about the pronunciation of H, J, y G, okay? So I think, if I'm not mistaken, I can find it, it's right here, okay? You have an explanation here that talks about the pronunciation of these letters. In Spanish, H is always silent, okay? It's never pronounced at the beginning of the sentence or in the middle of the word, excuse me, or in the middle of the word, like hombre, hola, hay, hora, ahora, alcohol, prohibido, okay? So it's always silent. The letter J, J, is pronounced similar to the English H in hot, but a little stronger, okay? Garaje, jardín, jueves, baja. It never has the sound J, okay? Never, as in just, never. It's always H, okay? The letter G is pronounced similar to the English G, G in goal, except when it's followed by E or I, okay? So we have the sound G, as in garaje, globo, guitarra, gordo, guerra, gusta, gracias. Okay? Notice the word guitarra, you have G-U-I, G-U-I. And in the word guerra, you have G-U-E. When you have those two combinations, G-U-I and G-U-E, in those two cases, the U is silent. Okay, so you're going to say guitarra and guerra. Guitarra, guerra. Only when it's G-U-I and G-U-E. But this is all the sound G. Garaje, globo, guitarra, gordo, guerra, gusta, gracias. It can also be in the middle of the word, okay, not always in the beginning. Now, when G is followed by E or I directly, without the U in the middle, it is pronounced similar to the J. Actually, it's the same sound. Similar to the English H in happy or hot, okay, when it's followed by E or I, E or E. Generalmente, gitano, agencia, agitado, okay? J and G never have the sound J, as in English, never, okay? So here, for example, you have some words. Hay, jardín, garaje, hospital, pongo, baja, generoso, okay? So, especially with the letter G, make sure that you take into consideration these two cases, okay? Muy bien. I'm going to get rid of that. Muy bien, so you're going to practice some with the vocabulary for house, and we're going to go to the irregular verbs section. Okay? Algunos verbos irregulares. Let me make this a little bit bigger. Verbos irregulares. Okay. So we looked at regular verbs, and they are verbs that have a pattern. Okay? They conjugate the same way, and the root of the verb stays the same, and all you do is change the ending of the verb. Okay? So in the present tense, irregular verbs are still going to have the endings that you learned. Okay? The endings that you learn with the regular verbs. But what makes them irregular is that they don't completely follow the pattern all the time. So we have 7 verbs here that we put them in a group because they have the same characteristic, in that the only verb conjugation that is irregular is for yo. See? For yo, it's going to be irregular, okay? Because the ending is going to be different, okay? The ending is going to be different. See, yo conocer, right? It's not going to be conjugated like a regular verb for yo. It's going to be conozco. It's pretty irregular, okay? The same thing with dar, okay? It's not going to follow the norm for regular verbs, the yo form, yo doy. Conocer means to be acquainted with, dar means to give. So these are very common words that we use all the time Okay, so it's very important that you know how to use them. Hacer, we use that word all the time, to do or to make. Okay, and poner, to put or to place. Salir, to leave or to go out. We learned in the last chapter that the verb llegar, which means to arrive. Arrive, this means to leave or to go out. Traer, to bring, and ver, to see. So we put them all together because the only irregularity that these verbs show is only in the yo form. Conozco, yo doy, yo hago. See, it doesn't really follow the endings like the regular verbs. Yo pongo, yo salgo, yo traigo, y yo veo. The rest of the persons conjugate like regular verbs that you learned in the last chapter. See, the endings are the same. Es, hemos, eis, en. Okay, so the only one that is going to be irregular is the yo form. Okay, so that is the one group of irregular verbs. The ones that are irregular only in the yo form. Okay? Grupo número dos. Grupo número dos. Okay? Verbs like venir, it's an ir verb. Okay? It's an ir verb. And a verb that ends in ir. Okay? So, the ending of the verbs are like the ones that you learned for the regular verbs. The yo form changes a little bit because you have to add a G-O, not just an O. Okay, you can't just drop the ending and add an O, like with regular verbs. You have to add a G. So the yo form is very particular. Okay, this verb is one of those that we call, well, it doesn't really have a name, but verbs that change from, the root changes from E to IE. So you can notice here, starting with tú, is venir is the root. This E is going to change to IE. Okay? Yo vengo, tú vienes, él viene, él, ella, usted viene, nosotros venimos y venís, don't change. Ustedes vienen, ellos y ellas vienen. Okay? Nosotros y vosotras never show irregularities. Okay? They're always the same as, they're always regular. Okay? Nosotros y vosotras in the present tense. Okay? All the others are going to show this irregularity in that the root changes. That's why they're called irregular. But the endings are the same that you learned before. Okay? Except here in the yo form. Okay, so this is another group. Group 2. Verbs that change from E to IE in the root. And then we have a third group. Okay? All the verbs, the verb forms, have a spelling change except in the nosotros and vosotros. These verbs, let's see here a bit. Decir means to say or to tell. Oír means to hear. Poder means to be able to. And querer means to want or to love. Okay? So in this group, decir, these are verbs that change the E of the root into an I. Okay? See, the root is decir, I mean the infinitive is decir. But when you conjugate it, the E changes into an I. Yo digo, see, the yo form changes quite a bit. Okay? Digo, have to add the G. Tú dices. Okay? Instead of the E, it's going to be E. And the endings are the same that you already know. Tú dices, usted dice, él, ella dice. Sí, nosotros and vosotros are always regular. They never change. Okay? Ustedes dicen and dicen. Okay? Oír is the same as decir. Digo, oigo. And then the I here in the root changes into a Y. Okay? Tú oyes, usted oye, él, ella, oye. Nosotros and vosotros is going to conjugate in a regular form. Ustedes, ellos y ellas oyen. Okay, so big change here. Verbs like poder change from the root from O to UE. UE, from O to UE. Okay, so instead of decir puedo, that would be the regular form, the root changes from O to UE. Yo puedo, tú puedes, él puede, él, ella puede. Nosotros and vosotros conjugate regularly. Ustedes, ellos, y ellas pueden. Okay? And querer is a verb that changes from to ie. To ie. Yo quiero, tú quieres, él quiere, él, ella quiere, nosotros and vosotros conjugate in the regular form. Ustedes, ellos, y ellas quieren. Okay? So, changes in the root, and especially in the yo form, you have to be careful because some of these are forms that are very irregular. All right? So these are the irregular verbs, the group of irregular verbs that we're going to be working with. Okay, so try to get them down and practice a lot with them. I think for today you're just going to have a couple of activities in the e-text. For today, you're going to do up to 3-6 and a few in the student activity manual. And those of you who do recordings, you're going to have just one recording. And tomorrow you're going to practice some more, okay, with irregular verbs. So try to get this down and do as much practice as possible, okay? So nos vemos mañana. Hasta mañana. Adiós.